Senior Galactic instructor Dr. Isabella Rodriguez adjusted her holographic display, facing the gathered representatives of the newly discovered Maraca species. The council chamber's soft blue lighting reflected off their crystalline exoskeletons as they settled into their observation pods. Before we proceed with standard integration protocols, she began, her voice steady and professional. The council requires all new members to receive this briefing. She paused, noting their subtle shifts of discomfort. It concerns a specific subset of human military specialists. The lead Maraca representative, first speaker Keslat, raised a crystalline appendage. We have studied human military capabilities. Their ships are inferior to hegemony vessels, their energy weapons primitive. Rodriguez nodded, having heard this assessment countless times before. Computer, display record THN 779, Luna base incident. The chamber darkened, and a holographic scene materialized. The representatives watched as a massive hegemony dreadnought, nearly 2 kilometers long, approached Earth's moon. This incident occurred during the first attempted invasion of Sol system. Rodriguez continued. The hegemony believed their shields and detection systems were adequate. They were wrong. She highlighted a small, barely visible position on a lunar ridge. Lieutenant Kai Nakamura was stationed here. The hologram zoomed in, showing a single human figure in environmental armor, nearly invisible against the lunar regolith. The representatives leaned forward, their crystalline forms catching the light as they moved. What followed changed our understanding of human capabilities forever. Rodriguez advanced the replay. The massive dreadnought's command bridge exploded silently in the vacuum of space. 3 more precision shots followed in rapid succession, each finding critical systems that the hegemony had believed were safely hidden behind meters of armor. How? Second speaker Tisral's translator crackled. Their targeting systems are not advanced enough for such precision. That's the point. Rodriguez highlighted the human's position again. No targeting system was used. Lieutenant Nakamura calculated the shots manually, accounting for lunar gravity, solar wind pressure, and the ship's shield harmonics. The calculations were done, as humans say, in his head. The chamber filled with the crystalline equivalent of murmurs. Impossible, Keslat declared. The computational requirements. Rodriguez interrupted by playing another recording. This time, the human figure adjusted their position slightly, and another shot pierced the vacuum. The hologram tracked the round as it curved around the moon's gravity well, passed through a solar wind eddy, and struck a cloaked support vessel that had been hidden behind the dreadnought. The support ship's location was unknown, she explained. Lieutenant Nakamura detected it by observing subtle gravitational effects on lunar dust particles. He then calculated a trajectory that used local gravitational fields to curve the shot around the dreadnought's sensor envelope. This is an isolated incident. Third speaker Rezkat interjected. One exceptional individual. Rodriguez shook her head, bringing up additional footage. Every human military maintains divisions of these specialists. They call them snipers, derived from an ancient term for hunting difficult prey. Their training combines mathematical intuition, environmental awareness, and patience that most species find disturbing. The chamber displayed multiple scenes, a human remaining motionless for 7 days in freezing conditions, another calculating shots through the atmospheric interference of 3 gas giants, a third eliminating targets through solid energy barriers using principles of quantum tunneling that they had intuited through experience rather than technology. The Galactic Council requires this briefing. Rodriguez concluded, because every species has, at some point, dismissed these warnings. The results have been consistently tragic. She paused, making eye contact with each representative. Humans don't rely on technology for these skills. They've been perfecting them since they first began hunting for food. Every advancement in technology merely enhances capabilities they already possessed. The chamber remained silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Keslat spoke. You said this is a specific subset. What percentage of humans possess these capabilities? Rodriguez smiled slightly. That's the most troubling part. Any human, given proper training and motivation, can develop these skills. Their educational facilities teach the basic principles to children as recreational activities. They call it sport shooting. The crystalline forms of the maraca representatives darkened in what Rodriguez recognized as their species' expression of deep concern. They had finally begun to understand. The maraca fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Nueva Terra system, their crystalline ships refracting starlight in dazzling patterns. First Commander Kislat stood on the bridge of the flagship, his exoskeleton dimming with satisfaction. Despite the warning briefing, he had convinced the Council that human colonies were valid military targets. Tactical analysis, he commanded, watching as the holographic display showed the small mining colony nestled in a valley between towering mountain ranges. Minimal defenses detected, his science officer reported. No energy signatures consistent with military installations. Population approximately 3,000 humans. Kazlat's form brightened. Perfect. Deploy the command ships in standard formation. Keep them behind the main fleet as per doctrine. High in the mountains overlooking the valley, Colonel Miguel Santos adjusted his position slightly, the motion so subtle it didn't disturb a single stone. He'd been there for 3 days, watching, waiting. His old instructor would have been proud. He hadn't moved more than 2 centimeters in any direction since taking his position. Sierra Actual to command. He subvocalized into his neural link. Confirm visual on primary targets. 11 command ships, standard maraca configuration. Range, 7.3 kilometers. The response came back instantly. Acknowledged. You are cleared to engage when ready. Santos allowed himself a small smile. The maraca had arranged their ships exactly as the intelligence reports suggested they would. Their doctrine always placed command and control vessels behind the main fleet, protected by layers of automated fighters and energy screens. He made minor adjustments to his calculations. The planet's magnetic field was interacting with the ship's shields in an interesting way, creating subtle distortions. The mountain's thermal updrafts would affect the trajectory. 3 moons meant complex gravitational interactions. Perfect conditions. The first shot caught the maraca completely by surprise. Their sensors registered nothing. No energy signature, no weapons lock, just the silent passage of a hypervelocity round through their supposedly impenetrable shields. The flagship's bridge disappeared in a precisely calculated explosion. Impossible. Second Commander Tizrael shouted as alerts blared across his ship. Where is the attack coming from? Another command ship erupted in flames, then another. No energy signatures, no warning. Just precision strikes that somehow bypassed their most advanced defensive systems. Santos cycled his next round, his breathing steady. The maraca were making it almost too easy, clustering their remaining command ships together as they attempted to coordinate a response. Their sensors swept the mountains with increasingly powerful scans, but they were looking for energy signatures, heat differentials, or technological signatures. They weren't looking for something as simple as a ghillie suit made of local materials, its pattern matching the mountain's rock formations down to the mineral composition. Target Beta 7, elevation 43 degrees, accounting for orbital drift and shield harmonics, Santos murmured to himself, his mind calculating trajectories that would have taken their most advanced computers several seconds to process. The shot passed through a gap in the planetary magnetic field, curved slightly in the gravitational wake of the smallest moon, and entered the target ship at precisely the angle needed to ignore the shield's phase variance. In the space of 7 minutes, the entire maraca command structure had been eliminated. The remaining automated ships, suddenly lacking coordination, began executing their default protocols, a full retreat. Hours later, as Santos finally allowed himself to move from his position, a message from Earth Command arrived. Confirmed kills on all primary targets. Maraca fleet in full retreat. Excellent work, Colonel. He packed his equipment with methodical precision, leaving no trace of his presence. The maraca would be back, he knew, but next time they would be even more afraid. They would develop new shields, new detection systems, new defensive formations. And next time, someone like him would figure out how to defeat those defenses too. It wasn't about the technology. It never had been. It was about patience, observation, and understanding how everything in the universe connected. Sierra Actual returning to base. He transmitted. Request permission to begin writing the after-action report. The Maraca tried some interesting shield harmonics. Other snipers should know about them. As he made his way down the mountain, Santos couldn't help but wonder if the Maraca would ever understand. It wasn't the weapons that made human snipers so effective. It was the way humans thought about space, time, and patience. Master Sergeant Jun-Ho Park lay motionless beneath the crust of ice and volcanic ash that covered the peak of Mount Kepler on Frost Prime. The temperature had dropped to -70°C 3 days ago, but he remained focused, his breathing so shallow that it didn't disturb the delicate layer of crystalline snow above him. The hegemony forces below had no idea they were being watched. Their thermal scanners couldn't differentiate his body heat from the geothermal vents that dotted the mountainside. He'd spent weeks studying the local wildlife, particularly the six-legged frost stalkers that used the vents to stay warm. His neural link quietly fed him data, wind speed variations, atmospheric pressure changes, and the subtle gravitational fluctuations from Frost Prime's 3 moons, all factors that would affect his shots when the time came. Target convoy approaching Sector 7. The AI whispered in his mind. Estimated arrival at the pass in 17 minutes. Park didn't respond. He didn't need to. Instead, he watched a nearby frost stalker adjust its position near a steam vent, noting how the creature used its tail to test wind directions. The local wildlife had already taught him more than any tactical manual could. The hegemony convoy appeared right on schedule. 12 heavily armored vehicles, each carrying what intelligence suggested were prototype shield generators. Their escorts included atmospheric fighters and mobile sensor arrays designed specifically to detect human snipers. Park smiled slightly. The hegemony had learned from their previous encounters, but they still thought in terms of technology. They hadn't considered that a human could learn to move exactly like a local predator, could match their breathing to the rhythm of the planet's geothermal pulses. The first shot caught the lead vehicle's power core exactly as it passed through a natural gap in the magnetic field lines. The second and third shots followed milliseconds later, each using the explosions from the previous targets to mask their approach. Impossible. The hegemony commander's transmission burst across all frequencies. These mountains were scanned down to the molecular level. There can't be a sniper here. Park shifted position with glacial slowness, matching his movement to the natural flow of ice down the mountainside. The frost stalker nearby didn't even twitch. It had accepted him as part of the environment weeks ago. 3 more shots, each using the mountain's natural features to guide their trajectory. One round skipped off a granite face. Its angle changed just enough to slip through a shield's refresh cycle. Another rode a thermal updraft, arriving at its target from an impossible angle. They're in the magnetic dead zones. Someone shouted. Adjust the shield frequencies. But Park was already compensating. His next shot used the electromagnetic pulse from a dying vehicle to mask its approach. The one after that followed a path so complex that even he had taken several minutes to calculate it, factoring in the gravitational effects of a passing meteor shower. In less than 4 minutes, the entire convoy lay in ruins. The surviving hegemony forces fled, their sensor arrays overwhelmed by conflicting data. They would report that the mountain itself had attacked them, that no organic being could have made those shots. Park waited another 3 hours before moving. Protocol suggested 5, but he had learned to trust the frost stalkers. When they returned to their normal hunting patterns, the area was truly clear. Mission accomplished, he subvocalized as he began the careful process of extracting himself from his position, requesting cleanup crew for target verification. Confirmed, Master Sergeant, command responded. The hegemony is already broadcasting warnings about haunted mountains on all frequencies. Your mission record will be added to the training archives. Park carefully gathered his equipment, making sure to restore every displaced stone and ice crystal. Future snipers would need these positions, and leaving any trace of his presence would endanger them. As he made his way down the mountain, following paths the frost stalkers had shown him, he considered writing a paper on incorporating local wildlife behavior into sniper operations. The hegemony would eventually develop better sensors, better shields, better countermeasures. But they would never understand how a human could simply become part of a mountain's ecosystem, could learn to think like the wind and move like the ice. That was the real secret, after all. Not the technology, not the calculations, but the patience to truly understand a place until you became part of it. Captain Yuki Tanaka perched in her observation post aboard the abandoned mining station orbiting Europa. Through her scope, Jupiter's massive form dominated the view, its swirling storms and magnetic fields creating a constantly shifting calculation puzzle that most targeting computers would find impossible to solve. That was exactly why she was here instead of a computer. Target vessel approaching Jupiter's upper atmosphere, her spotter, Lieutenant Manuel Torres, whispered, cinching orbital data now. Tanaka made minute adjustments to her position, feeling the subtle vibrations of Europa's ice sheets through the station's structure. The target was a stealth ship that had been raiding colonies throughout the system, using Jupiter's radiation belts to mask its movements. Running final calculations, she murmured, her mind processing multiple layers of gravitational forces, Jupiter's pull, Europa's orbit, the radiation pressure from solar winds, and the complex dance of magnetic fields that could deflect a shot by millimeters, just enough to miss at these distances. The target ship emerged from behind one of Jupiter's larger storms, its stealth systems making it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. But Tanaka had spent weeks studying the way Jupiter's storms bent around objects, the subtle distortions in the radiation belts that no cloaking system could completely mask. Target acquired, she breathed. Distance, 12.7 kilometers, adjusting for gravitational lensing. Torres watched in fascination as she made calculations that would have taken a supercomputer precious seconds to process. Humans like her could somehow feel the gravitational forces, could intuit the complex interactions between celestial bodies in ways that artificial systems never could. Storm pattern approaching target vector, he reported. 15 seconds until optimal conditions. Tanaka didn't respond. She was in that space that elite snipers reached, where consciousness merged with calculation. She felt Jupiter's magnetic field pulling at her round, saw how it would interact with the solar wind streams, calculated how the target's movement through the radiation belt would create a momentary corridor. The shot, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. A single round, traveling along a path that curved through 3 different gravitational fields, rode a magnetic flux line, and arrived precisely as the target's stealth field cycled. The ship's bridge disappeared in a precisely contained explosion. 2 more shots followed, each using the debris from the previous hit to mask their approach, each finding critical systems through gaps that existed for microseconds. Target neutralized, Torres confirmed, watching as the disabled ship began a controlled descent into Jupiter's atmosphere. Rescue crews are en route for survivor recovery. Tanaka finally allowed herself to relax slightly. Calculate firing solution recording, she ordered. The Academy will want to study this one. Torres shook his head in amazement. The gravitational math alone. How did you compensate for the radiation belt's effect on the round's magnetic signature? I didn't, she replied, beginning to pack her equipment. I used it. The belt's oscillation created a natural acceleration track. The round arrived at the target carrying almost twice its initial velocity. The recording would join others in the Interstellar Sniper Academy's archives. Future students would spend hours analyzing how she had turned Jupiter's fearsome natural forces into tools, how she had seen paths through the chaos that even the most advanced targeting systems would have missed. Hours later, as they prepared to return to base, Torres watched her make one final scan of the area. The aliens still don't understand, do they? He asked. How we can do these things? Tanaka smiled slightly. They think it's about the technology, about having better scopes or smarter computers. They don't understand that humans have been calculating trajectories since we first threw stones at prey. We've been reading wind and gravity since before we had words for them. She secured her rifle, her movements precise and practiced. Every human child who's ever thrown a ball has done complex gravitational calculations. We just do it instinctively. Add a few centuries of practice and scientific understanding, and this is the result. The aliens would adapt, she knew. They always did. They would develop new stealth systems, new defenses, new ways to hide. But they would never understand how a human could look at the space between worlds and see not chaos, but patterns. How we could feel the dance of gravity and magnetism and turn it into art. Gabriela Martinez knelt beside a fallen leaf on her grandfather's ranch in Argentina, showing her alien student how a single bent stem could tell a story. These is a Galaxian ambassador's aide, who had introduced himself as first scholar Xtet, watched with his compound eyes whirling in confusion. "This is primitive," he stated, his translator struggling to convey his mix of disdain and curiosity. "Our battle computers can track thousands of targets simultaneously." Gabriela smiled, remembering how her grandfather had taught her these same lessons 20 years ago, before humanity reached the stars. "Tell me what your sensors show about the game trail 50 meters to our west." Ted activated his advanced scanning suite. 3 herbivorous creatures passed through 2 hours ago. "They where?" He stopped abruptly, mandibles clicking in surprise. The sensors show nothing else. "Now look at the bent leaves, the pressed soil, the way the morning dew has been disturbed." Gabriela pointed to signs invisible to electronic scanning. A predator followed them. It stepped exactly where they stepped, matching their pace, using their tracks to mask its own passage. The alien leaned closer, his earlier disdain forgotten. "How can you know this?" "Because humans have been reading these signs for thousands of years." She stood, adjusting her grandfather's old rifle on her shoulder. Every child who grew up hunting learned to see these patterns. Now he applied those same skills to tracking ships through space. They continued their walk through the morning mist, Gabriela pointing out more signs that Xtet's advanced technology missed completely. A shifted stone that showed something heavy had passed. Grass bent in multiple directions, telling the story of a brief rest stop. "Your orbital defense networks," she explained, "are like this grass. Everything that passes leaves a trace, if you know how to read it. Technology just helps us see the signs we already know to look for." A distant crack echoed through the valley. Xtet's battle reflexes activated, but Gabriela remained calm. "That's my grandfather, teaching my daughter. The same way he taught me, the same way his grandfather taught him." Teaching what exactly? The alien's confusion was evident. Patience, observation, understanding how everything in nature connects. She paused by a stream, showing him how the current changed around submerged rocks. When you're tracking a ship through an asteroid field, it's not so different from reading these waters. Everything that moves leaves a wake. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley, where her grandfather and 8-year-old daughter sat beside a small campfire. The old man was pointing to distant trees, teaching the girl to estimate range using natural markers. "This is why we feared your snipers," Xtet realized. "Not because of superior technology, but because these skills are part of who we are," Gabriela finished. "My daughter will learn to read the wind by watching leaves dance. When she's older, she'll apply that knowledge to calculate how solar winds affect projectile trajectories." Her grandfather waved them over, his weathered face creasing in a smile. He'd been skeptical about teaching alien students until Gabriela explained that sharing knowledge might prevent future conflicts. "Your military academies," Xtet said as they walked toward the campfire. "They blend these ancient skills with modern technology. The best snipers understand both." Gabriela helped her daughter adjust her shooting stance. "Technology enhances what we already know, but the fundamentals, patience, observation, understanding. Those come from days like this. The alien watched in fascination as 3 generations of humans shared knowledge that predated spaceflight. His report to the Galactic Council would try to explain how humans had turned their evolutionary history as pursuit predators into an art form that transcended technology. But he was beginning to understand that some things couldn't be explained in tactical briefings or technical manuals. The real secret of human snipers wasn't in their weapons or their training, but in moments like this. A grandfather teaching his granddaughter to read the wind, to understand the language of bent grass and shifting shadows. In the end, that was what made human snipers so formidable. Not their technology, but their connection to skills as old as humanity itself. Master Instructor Hiro Yamamoto moved through the dense forest of New Hokkaido without disturbing a single leaf, his movements so fluid that the native wildlife continued their activities undisturbed. Behind him, a group of mixed-species military observers struggled to match his silent progress. "Impossible," muttered Senior Commander Arkstik of the Centaurian Defense Force. "Our bioscanners can't differentiate him from the surrounding vegetation." Yamamoto paused, turning to face his students. His camouflage suit, a blend of traditional ghillie techniques and modern smart materials, shifted patterns subtly to match the dappled forest light. "Your sensors are searching for disruptions," he explained softly. "But true stealth isn't about avoiding detection. It's about becoming part of the environment." He demonstrated by slowly kneeling beside a fallen log. The observers watched in fascination as local insects continued their work around him, completely unperturbed by his presence. A small flying creature even landed briefly on his shoulder. "Human children play a game called freeze tag," he continued. "They learn to stop all movement instantly, to control their breathing, to remain perfectly still. We've been practicing these skills since before we had written language." The alien observers took notes as Yamamoto explained how traditional human hunting techniques had evolved into modern space warfare applications, how understanding animal behavior patterns led to better prediction of patrol routes, how studying natural camouflage led to breakthroughs in stealth technology. "Watch the tree line," he instructed, pointing to a distant ridge. The observers activated their most sophisticated scanning equipment, searching for any sign of movement. "There's nothing there," declared technical specialist Ulskar after several minutes of intense scanning. Yamamoto smiled slightly. "Lieutenant Chung, please stand up." 30 meters away, a section of the hillside rose smoothly to reveal a human sniper in full camouflage. The alien observer's instruments hadn't detected her presence even at this close range. "How?" demanded Arkstik. "She was there the entire time." "Lieutenant Chang has been observing us for 3 hours," Yamamoto confirmed. "She matched her breathing to the rhythm of the wind in the trees. Her heartbeat synchronized with the local magnetic field fluctuations. She became part of the hill." Chang approached the group, her camouflage suit shifting patterns. Close up, the observers could see how she had incorporated local plants and materials into her gear, creating a disguise that was part technology, part nature. "Your species rely too heavily on electronic scanning," she explained, removing a piece of local moss from her suit. "You forget that life itself is the most sophisticated detection system ever created. When you learn to move without disturbing the natural patterns of a place, no scanner will ever find you." Yamamoto nodded approvingly. "This is why human snipers are so effective in space combat. We don't try to defeat detection systems. We work with natural phenomena that already mask our presence. Solar radiation, gravitational lensing, magnetic field lines." He led the group to a clearing where more camouflaged humans revealed themselves, each having observed from different positions. The alien observers' instruments hadn't detected any of them. Every planet, every asteroid field, every sector of space has its own rhythms. Yamamoto continued. "Human snipers learned to read these patterns the same way our ancestors read forest trails. Technology just helps us apply these ancient skills to new environments." The observers watched as the snipers demonstrated different techniques, showing how traditional Earth camouflage methods have been adapted for various planetary environments. How understanding predator-prey relationships improved stealth tactics. How studying natural phenomena led to better shot placement. Your weapons are primitive by our standards. Arctic noted. Your scanning technology is generations behind ours. And yet we consistently succeed where more advanced systems fail, Yamamoto finished. Because we understand that true stealth, true accuracy, comes from working with nature, not trying to overcome it. As the day's training concluded, the alien observers had pages of notes, but still struggled to comprehend the fundamental concept. They couldn't grasp how a species could turn their primitive hunting instincts into an art form that transcended advanced technology. Lieutenant Anna Sophia Ortiz perched in her observation pod at the edge of the Perseus Nebula, studying the swirling clouds of gas and stellar matter that created one of the most challenging shooting environments in known space. 3 distinct atmospheric layers, each with its own complex physics, separated her from the target zone. Command confirms pirate fleet location. Her spotter, Sergeant Louis Chen, whispered through their neural link. They're using the nebula's radiation to mask their approach to the colony. Ortiz made minute adjustments to her position, feeling the subtle vibrations of solar winds through her pod's sensitive hull. The pirates had chosen this route believing the nebula's interference made long-range targeting impossible. No known targeting computer could calculate an accurate firing solution through the chaotic environment. Multiple atmospheric boundaries detected, Chen reported. Gas density increasing in Sector 7. Temperature differentials are off the charts. Perfect, Ortiz murmured, her mind already calculating the complex interactions between the nebula's layers. Where computers saw chaos, she saw patterns. The gas clouds moved like ocean currents, the radiation waves pulsed like a heartbeat, and the magnetic fields twisted like mountain winds. She had spent 3 weeks studying the nebula's rhythms, learning its moods. Now, as she watched the pirate fleet approach, she saw the path that would guide her shots through the seemingly impossible barrier. First target locked, she breathed, calculating convergence point. The shot, when it came, rode the nebula's natural currents. The round followed the magnetic field lines like a river, using the temperature differentials between gas layers to maintain its trajectory. It passed through 3 distinct atmospheric boundaries, each transition precisely calculated to bend the shot toward its target. The pirate flagship's bridge disappeared in a silent explosion. Impossible. The pirate's tactical channel erupted with panic. Nothing can shoot through the nebula. Our shields are being pierced by projectiles. Ortiz was already adjusting for her next shot. The debris from the first explosion had created new patterns in the gas clouds, new pathways she could exploit. 2 more shots followed in quick succession, each using the chaos of the previous hit to mask its approach. They're falling back to the dense gas clouds, Chen reported, thinking the visibility will protect them. They still don't understand, Ortiz replied, making another minute adjustment. The nebula isn't their shield. It's my weapon. Her next series of shots proved the point. Each round used the nebula's natural phenomena in ways the pirates' tactical computers couldn't predict. One shot rode a radiation wave, accelerating through a natural magnetic tunnel. Another curved through 3 different gas densities, its path bending in ways that defied conventional ballistics. In less than 6 minutes, the entire pirate fleet had been disabled or destroyed. Target zone clear, Chen confirmed. Colony defense ships moving in to secure the area. Ortiz maintained her position for another hour, watching the nebula's patterns return to their natural flow. The pirates had sophisticated shields, advanced sensors, and powerful weapons. But they had made the same mistake as so many others, thinking that technology alone could protect them. Command wants to know how you calculated those shots, Chen said as they finally began packing their equipment. The targeting computers are still trying to analyze the trajectories. Ortiz smiled slightly. Tell them I listened to the nebula. The gas clouds, the radiation, the magnetic fields, they all speak to each other. Once you understand their language, finding the right path is simple. Her report would join others in the growing database of impossible shots that human snipers had made. Future students would study how she had turned the nebulous chaos into a precision instrument, how she had seen paths through the turbulence that no computer could calculate. They'll develop better shields, Chen noted as their pod prepared for departure. Better sensors, better countermeasures. And we'll adapt, Ortiz replied. Because we don't rely on technology to show us the way. We feel it, like our ancestors felt the wind and rid the stars. The universe speaks to those who know how to listen. Commander Diego Reyes stood before the first graduating class of the Interstellar Precision Academy, his weathered face reflecting pride as he surveyed the diverse group of beings before him. Humans sat alongside Centaurians, Zigzalaxians, and even a few Maraca, their crystalline forms catching the light. When we first proposed this academy, he began, his voice carrying across the ceremonial hall, many said it was impossible, that our techniques couldn't be taught to other species, that our skills were uniquely human. He gestured to the holographic display behind him, showing footage from their training exercises. A Centaurian student demonstrating perfect stillness for 3 days. A Zigzalaxian calculating complex gravitational trajectories by feeling the pull of nearby stars. They were wrong, he continued. What makes human snipers special isn't our biology or our technology. It's our understanding that precision comes from patience, observation, and harmony with the environment. The students straightened in their seats, remembering the countless hours they had spent learning to read solar winds like surface breezes, to feel gravitational fields like changes in terrain, to see patterns in cosmic radiation like tracks in the morning dew. Each of you has learned to shoot, Rice said, pacing slowly across the stage. But more importantly, you've learned to listen, to observe, to understand that every environment, from a forest floor to an asteroid field, has its own rhythm. He paused, allowing his gaze to meet each student's eyes, or equivalent sensory organs. You've learned that true accuracy isn't about overwhelming force or superior technology. It's about becoming part of the space you occupy. The holographic display shifted to show their final qualification exercises. A Maraca student tracking a target through a nebula's magnetic fields. A Centaurian using solar flares to mask their position. Each demonstration showing how traditional human hunting techniques had been adapted for species with very different physiologies. Some of you came here fearing human snipers, Rise acknowledged. Others came seeking to understand why we were so effective. But you're leaving with something more valuable. The knowledge that these skills transcend species and technology. He activated another display, showing their first day of training compared to their last. The improvement was dramatic, but it wasn't just about accuracy. Each student had learned to move differently, to observe more carefully, to understand their environment more deeply. Your governments will want you to teach these skills to others, he continued. And you will. But remember that what you're really teaching isn't how to shoot. You're teaching how to listen to the universe, how to read its signs, how to become part of its patterns. The ceremony proceeded with the presentation of qualifications. Each graduate received not just a certificate, but a simple leaf preserved in crystal, a reminder that their training had begun with learning to read natural signs, just as human hunters had done for millennia. You're the first, Rice concluded, but not the last. Each of you will go on to teach others, to show them that precision isn't about technology or biology. It's about understanding, patience, and respect for the environment you operate in. After the ceremony, as the graduates mingled with their instructors, First Scholar Xtet approached Rice. We finally understand, the Zigzalaxian said, why human snipers were so feared, and why that fear was misplaced. Rice nodded. Because the real power was never in the weapon or the technique, it was in the understanding. That everything is connected, Xtet finished. That success comes not from fighting against nature, but from working with it. As the celebration continued, Reyes watched his graduates with satisfaction. They would return to their worlds not just as skilled marksmen, but as teachers of a philosophy that transcended combat. They had learned what humanity had known since its earliest days, that true precision comes from understanding your place in the natural order. The universe, he knew, would be different now. Not because they had taught other species to be better warriors, but because they had shown them a better way to understand their environment. The fear of human snipers would gradually be replaced by respect for the knowledge they shared. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. The end.